This is Your Two Cents, the podcast, made possible by credit unions in partnership with Canadian Content Studios. I'm Jonathan Torrens. Beanie Babies, lamps, Air Jordans. No, I'm not talking about things I found in my aunt's basement, though I could be. I'm talking about collections. But is the time and money put into a collection really ever going to see a huge payoff? Will your stamp collection actually fund your retirement? Or will it just be a nostalgic reminder of a time you spent all your money collecting? Alicia and Sylvia talk to collectors from baseball cards to bobbleheads to see if their collections are collecting money or just dust.
As a collector of experiences, I'm really excited to get into today's topic because it's something I literally know absolutely nothing about.
I don't know anything about this either, but today we are hearing from some very cool people about collecting. Does it actually turn into profit, or are you actually just collecting dust?
Like, I tried to think about, do I collect anything? And I think if you ask my husband, he would tell you that I collect clothing.
Same.
Like, in his brain, like that would be what he would come up with. And then I was thinking back to myself as a kid, and I definitely collected things like the typical like Beanie Babies, which yeah, I know you know a lot of them, and Spice Girls things because I was obsessed with the Spice Girls.
Like the stickers and the gum
Yeah,
and
the stickers
lollipops.
and the gum. Yes, yeah. But now as an adult, like I have none of those. It's not like I took any of that with me. I don't have it in a box somewhere. And then thinking about it now, the only thing that Scott and I started collecting over the last 2 years is our card keys from the hotels and the places that we've stayed since we've started traveling. And I guess it's not a collection that we can sell, but it goes back to me saying that I'm a collector of experiences because I think that that's kind of been our thing, is collecting these memories. That's the only thing that we're actively collecting right now is those cards from the hotel, just so I can make a cool like photo out of them and put them all on there, and each one of them will hold a little memory. But I got nothing of value to sell to anybody, so.
Me neither. I'm sort of the same as you. I have like ticket stubs for my first Canucks game, that Roberto Luongo side, although he just got inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame, so maybe that's worth something now.
That might be worth something, yeah.
I have a bunch of playbills from some of my favorite plays when I've gone to New York to see Broadway plays, so I'm the same way. Like, I collect things like that hold sentimental value. I have a little bit of a gallery wall in my office where I put that stuff, but no one's buying my media pass from the Canadian Screen Awards, you know? Like, I'm super pumped about that, but no one's buying that. And as a kid, I was the same thing. Like, definitely had the stickers of the Spice Girls. Absolutely had Beanie Babies. I loved POGS. I had a sick collection of Lion King POGS that I was very proud of, but I think
I had
sold them
Pokemon cards.
Oh, there you go.
I had Pokemon cards, but very much like at the time themed things to collect. Not something that like my heart was naturally attached to, that I just collected and kept. But yeah,
that we can make money off of. And I think that's the craziest thing, is that you and I are both coming at this knowing nothing about how to take our collections and turning them into money. But we have people who have done that, which is super cool.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited for this conversation and for y'all to hear from these guests, just because it really kind of opened my eyes to collecting and what it means to collect. And kind of what I'm collecting isn't very different than what they're collecting, and they just go about it in a different way and have an actual product or thing attached to it. But yeah, so without further ado, we're going to turn it over to some amazing collectors who are going to share their stories with us so we can find out for ourselves just what happens to collectors when they collect.
Hey, my name's Ken Reid. I'm the prime time anchor of Sportsnet Central on Sportsnet. I collect hockey cards, baseball cards, and sports memorabilia. Basically anything that tickles my fancy. I think it's a good way to enjoy the history of the game. Two games I love, hockey and baseball.
Hello, I am Mireka Starr. I'm a 31-year-old artist. I collect horror figures and horror Funko Pops.
Hello, my name's Craig, and I am a collector of many things, but the collection I am most proud of is my collection of Toronto Blue Jays bobbleheads.
Why or how did I start collecting? I guess I started collecting the same way anybody else does as a young kid. Back in the day, you'd buy a pack of cards for $0.25. You get a stick of gum with it. For me, it was a great way to learn about baseball. It was a great way to learn about hockey. Growing up in rural Nova Scotia, there was only one hockey game on a night. And if I wanted to know what players looked like, I should say only one game on a week, that was Hockey Night in Canada. And if I wanted to know what players looked like, where they were from, what their stats were, there was no internet to look up stats or anything like that. So I had to look at the back of hockey cards. So as a little sports nerd, as a little sports guru, I absolutely devoured the things. And I got really serious about it in around grade 7 when my mom brought a price guide home and I realized that hockey and baseball cards were worth money. And then I went absolutely nuts. I started buying and selling. I'd set up as a dealer with my brother and my buddies at sports card shows in Halifax. Took a break during college and, as I crisscrossed the country trying to become a sportscaster, but got seriously back into it in around 2010 and I've been at it ever since. Do I think collecting is a good investment? It can be. It can also not be. It depends how you want to do it. I like to think that my collection can sustain itself. So I have an account on eBay where I buy and sell. I love going to shows and stores more. Well, I love going to shows and stores, but with eBay, it actually worked really well out during the pandemic. There was a lot of things I didn't think I'd be able to sell that I sold. So usually if I get money, I put it right back into a collection. And if I buy collections, I sell them. And I usually end up keeping most. And I just kind of get back to ground zero. So my hobby sustains itself. But can it be a good investment? Yes. Can it be a bad investment? Yes. It's just like anything. Probably have around 70,000 sports cards. And trying to tone that down, I usually end up giving quite a bit away to kids in the neighborhood. My son's friends. So I'm looking to pare down. Looking for quality over quantity. How much do I think I've invested in my collection to date? I'd say I'd probably spent thousands of dollars, but I've made money back. So I don't know. I'd like to think I'm net zero. If I'm net zero, I'm very, very happy. That's cash in, cash out, but I don't do it for the money. I do it just for the pure love of collecting. Where do I keep it all? Much to the chagrin of my wife, it's in my house. Our linen closets are card closets, which is not very fair to my wife, but she seems to, understand my obsession. Has the collection ever been questioned by anyone? By that, meaning people ask me, why do I collect? Not really. I think people understand it. And if you show some cool old cards or old autographs or old pictures or artifacts off to people, they usually like it. Have you ever sold pieces of your collection? Yes. As I mentioned, I would deal cards for a while. I sell on eBay. I buy on eBay. And I usually sell, and then if I get money, I put it right back into my collection. Did the sale price match what I thought I'd get? Sometimes no, sometimes yes, sometimes it exceeds the price. All about supply and demand. And for years, there were cards that basically had little to no value, and the pandemic came about, and these cards suddenly shot up in value. And cards that I thought I would die with, and I'm talking I had multiples of each, I sold on eBay. That was a great thing. How does one go about selling items for your collection? I sell on eBay. I can sell to other dealers. Sometimes I use Kijiji, Facebook Marketplace, all kinds of ways. Do I ever plan on selling all of my collection? Not all of it. I'd like to pass some on down to my sons. They're little sports geeks too, so I think they'd appreciate it down the road. What advice would you give someone who collects things? My only piece of advice, collect what you like. Do it for yourself. Don't do it for anyone else. And do your homework. Don't get sucked into buying something that you think you should buy just because someone else says to buy it.
The majority of my collection are all characters from horror movies. I do have some nostalgic pieces as well, just from my childhood, but for the most part, they are all horror pieces. I started collecting during a time where I was having a bit of a rough go, and I needed something to boost my mood a little bit. So I actually decided to visit a local comic book store that also sold figures, and I went in one day and started talking to the staff there, and I saw they have a whole wall of Funko Pops. And I went in with the goal of finding something horror related, which they didn't have a lot of because horror is very popular, I guess. A lot of people look for horror pieces, so they go really quickly. And I got to talking with the owner, who ended up going out back to see if he had anything related to horror in a Funko Pop. And that was the day that I got my first full set of Funko Pops from the movie Us, the horror movie by Jordan Peele. And that was my first time purchasing a Funko Pop, and I got the full set. So that was the start of my obsession, really. I think that collecting could be a good investment, I guess, depending on what it is you're collecting and what those items may be worth. I would say that my collection is pretty large. I currently have 109 pieces, including both my horror figures and Funko Pops. I'm really not sure how much I've invested into my collection because I've gotten some free pieces, I've gotten pieces that were on sale, and I've spent a good chunk on certain pieces as well. I would have to say that it's definitely over $1,000, but I don't have an exact number. I keep all of my collectibles in my bedroom as of right now. All of my Funko Pops are displayed on 6 shelves. And then I have lots of figures that are still in their boxes and I haven't taken them out yet. But they're kind of just hanging out, not really displayed yet because I don't have the space. I have had a lot of people question my collection and why I do it. They don't really understand why I would want to collect plastic toys. But it's something that makes me happy, so I do it. But it has definitely been questioned. I have no plans on selling any pieces from my collection. The purpose of me collecting is not to resell. It's simply because I enjoy it and it brings me happiness, and I love sitting back and observing all of my figures displayed on my shelves and looking at the details of them, and it's just something that brings a bit of happiness to my day. I think if anyone is interested in selling figures like Funko Pops or horror figures, I think that it would probably be best to do a little bit of research, maybe see what other collectors are selling for, what certain pops are worth, and I guess seeing what people are looking for and seeing if you have figures that maybe are popular or that are very rare and kind of going from there. My favorite part of collecting would have to be the whole experience. The people that I've met who sell the collectibles, the community of people that I've gotten to communicate with and connect with who also have a love of collecting figures. The happy feeling that I get when I find a rare piece from a favorite scary movie of mine that took me forever to find, but I finally found it and now it's mine. Like, it's like Christmas, and I've turned into a little kid again, and I get this feeling of nostalgia. And when I have a certain figure, it takes me back to like the first time I saw, that character in that movie for the first time. And it's just a very good feeling. And it's a lot of fun. A lot of people, look at it as being childish, but hey, we all have a little kid in us, and I like to embrace it. Any advice I'd give to anybody who collects things, if it brings you joy, don't let anybody make you feel bad about it. I think what people don't understand, they sometimes will put down, and they can look at, collecting things as being a waste of money or a waste of time. But I think that, we all have to find the things that bring us joy in life, and collecting collectibles is one of those things. And I feel like if it's something that you really enjoy, just keep that joy, keep having fun with it, keep loving it, and don't let anybody make you feel like you shouldn't.
I have amassed hundreds and hundreds of bobbleheads over the years in an effort to have the biggest and most complete collection out there. We've invested a lot of money into our collection, but also there's a lot of trading and swapping with other people who are into this hobby as well, which is also part of the fun, is meeting people who are into the same thing as you. The bobblehead collection has certainly been questioned by a lot of people, particularly my wife. Do we need an extra bobblehead? Do we need to go and meet up with a guy and spend half our Saturday driving around to garage sales and Kijiji and Facebook Marketplace meetups? The answer is always yes. Over the years, we have started to sell off bits and pieces of our collection to pay for various things around our new home. And as time has progressed and our children have been able to reach the shelves on which they are displayed, we've had to put them away in boxes, so it doesn't hurt as much when we sell them since they're not on display in our house anymore. My advice to somebody who collects something is that your time and money investment into something is worth it if you want to sell off your collection at some point, but also the memories and sentimental value attached to your collection is also worth something. So if the dollar value outweighs the sentimentality of it, then go ahead and sell. If not, hold on to it. And also my advice to people who collect things is that you have to know that you will never be finished.
Did you know that credit unions got their start giving loans to small businesses that weren't seen as viable by others? They were also the first place to lend money to women on their own, and credit unions brought the first ATMs to Canada. So aside from being trailblazers, their people and community-first attitude makes them the perfect place for all your money matters. Whether you're opening your first account, looking for a mortgage, or just seeking some simple advice for saving, they'll take care of you. Credit unions are proud to sponsor Your 2 Cents, the podcast, because they know the more we talk about money, the less scary it'll be.
Thank you to all of our guests for contributing. I loved listening to this because our guests all collect different things, but they kind of went about them in a similar way, which I thought was super interesting.
I think it's so cool listening to them talk about how impactful the experience of collecting is.
Yeah.
I think in my brain, when I think of a collector, that what they're attached to is the thing. I didn't realize until listening to each of them speak that it's not just the thing they're attached to, just what a community they have become a part of and built by having these interactions with other collectors and building friendships and having these cool conversations. So that's why I said at the beginning, it's not very, like, in my mind, I'm collecting experiences, but so are they. They're just attached
Totally.
to a right now moment. But yeah, Mireka, I love Mireka. I'm obsessed with all things Halloween. So I think that that's such a cool thing to be. I guess you could say I collect Halloween decorations in a sense, but not like the Funko Pops. I really was attached to what she said about feeling like a kid. Because we just talked about how we only collected those things that we had collected when they were attached to an interest that we had as a kid. And I think we lose that part of us as an adult, that like collecting and having things. And obviously this podcast is about money, but we learned where to place our money and where the value lies. And sometimes we forget that there's value in the joy of collecting things and finding, your people and having that experience. And that can bring just as much value as, what I spend my money on or the experiences that I spend my money on. So I loved listening to all of them. They were so different.
I know. And I think the thing about Mireka's that I really love too was that she's a new collector. So, the other two collectors have been doing it for a really long time and she is new to it. And the thing I love about that is that it's not just about going and like buying the thing. There's Funkos that she's been gifted and Funkos that have been, brought into her life from other people, which I think is also really cool because someone's bringing you something that speaks to you. And that's such a thoughtful gesture from somebody else. And so I just thought building a collection in a way of exactly what you're talking about, building a community, people thinking about you. Oh, I saw this and it reminded me of you. So I just think that community and what you said about it, speaking to that experience, I used to go to POG tournaments as a kid. We lost that. Like now I really want to go to a POG tournament because you're with people. The POG tournaments, I think were at like a comic book store or something. And you'd go and meet other kids who loved POGs. And that seems so silly, but it's childlike and fun. And why don't we do that anymore? And I think there is a little bit of like hoarder mentality attached to collecting, but I think this really broke that down and it's like, no, it's not about hoarding. It's about collecting experiences, building community, and finding something that you love. If you've got that disposable income and you're choosing to spend it on a collection, that's a really cool thing. It's about more than the physical object in front of you, which I completely agree. I did not expect that to be a takeaway.
Yeah, no, I just like the child part really got to me because I am trying to find joy in more childlike ways because I think we do kind of let go of that part of ourselves when we become an adult because we think we have to. And when she spoke about that, that really like hit home for me that it is a collecting and getting back to that like playfulness of buying things that make us feel good. And I really did like Ken talking about how he wasn't planning on selling all of his cards and how he was hoping to pass them down to his kids. I love the idea of that so much too. Like I think that that's such a cool legacy, especially if it's something that your kids also are interested in. Yeah, so I liked the idea of like collecting becoming something that you could kind of leave behind to the people that you love and you got to enjoy that with.
My brother-in-law has a collection of those wrestlers, those, I don't know if you remember them, but they were like stretchy, sort
Yeah.
of rubbery wrestlers. And he kept all of them. And then when his kids were old enough, he started playing with those wrestlers with his kids. And they took an interest in something and they got to do it together. And he got to, again, go back to this childlike version of himself who was collecting them and had this really fun experience with his kids in doing that. And I love that. And one very strange thing is that my husband has a lot of his own hockey cards. I don't know why there's a collection of these in his house, but his mom has kept like all of his hockey cards, but not like one of each of them. There's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them. But one funny thing that's happened is that all of these guys who used to play hockey together on this team have stayed in touch over the years, and they've started giving their hockey cards to each other's kids, and the kids have started collecting cards from a hockey team that their parents played on, which is so cool to me. So
That is
now
so
these
cute.
kids have my husband's hockey cards in their hockey collection. And it's not like they were superstar hockey players, but what a cool thing. And so that's what I loved about Ken's thing too, is that these cards were sort of this portal into a time where we couldn't just Google everything. And I think that that's such a cool thing to have a tangible experience to read a hockey card and read a player's stats. You absolutely can go online and find that now, but to sit and actually read and analyze a card and look at, I used to even love getting the McDonald's hockey cards and looking at them and which ones have the holograms and all that cool stuff. So I watched my nephew, who's only 11, get super into hockey card collecting. And now he's got the binder and all, the plastic sheets and everything that we had too. And I think it's really amazing in that it's a legacy you leave behind, but it's also that memory that you're building in the moment, whether it's with your kids or your nieces and nephews or whatever. I just think that's such a cool thing. And I also like that he has sold stuff and has said, okay, I'm willing to part with that. Yeah, it's worth a bunch of money now. In the pandemic, a bunch of his cards popped up in value. So get rid of them. If you're not sentimentally attached to every single one of them and there is a financial gain to it, why not? You obviously have to spend money to build a collection. And I think it's that sort of point in between of how much is too much. Craig talked about his bobblehead collection and how it's kind of grown and there's maybe not as much space for it as there used to be. So do you hit a point in time where you go, okay, this doesn't serve my needs anymore? And are you willing to walk away from a collection because it's not what it means to you anymore? And I think that's absolutely fine as well.
I think we do that with lots of stuff, not even just the stuff that we collect. Like I find I know how much of my decor that in my brain at the time I put away in storage thinking I'll use that again, that when I do my next clean out, because it was never out and because I don't feel as attached to it, it's a little bit easier for me to get rid of, which is what I believe Craig said too. Some of them have been hidden away a little bit so that doesn't, that hurt of selling them or parting with them doesn't feel that as deep, which I love. And I think was it Ken that says he puts his money back into his collection?
Yeah.
So what he makes off it is the money that, and I think that that's a really cool place to get to, and like a really good piece of advice for collectors who want to continue to collect, but also want to, not financially dig themselves into a hole while collecting. Like, I think that that's a cool concept of, well, yes, you have your initial investment in collecting, but as you go, what you put into it comes from what you've already put into it. So I liked that as like a little suggestion or like a tidbit for those who are looking to collect, but also not like spend too much money getting the collection that they want.
Yeah, it's interesting because yard sales are a thing that I grew up being obsessed with. My family used to go to yard sales all the time. You never knew what you were going to find. And that recently, it's yard sale season, and walking around our neighborhood and seeing yard sales, a lot of it is Funko Pops and figures and stuff that people are willing to get rid of. And that's such a great price point to be able to come in at, because you're not paying retail price when you're going to a yard sale, and you're also helping someone maybe fund the next thing that they're looking for as well too, when you're buying them from that particular place. And it's interesting, my husband just started collecting CDs. This is a new thing. He found his old CD collection in an old CD case. He hung it in his office. And so we've been going to yard sales. The conversations you have with people, it's such a cool thing. And I think that's like the giant takeaway on this overall is be careful about how much you're spending, because it can be a slippery slope if you now need every little thing to fill your collection. But have fun with it. Talk to people, build a community around it. It doesn't need to just be this transaction of goods. It's an experience. And my brain keeps exploding over this. I know we keep saying it, but I just didn't really understand the emotional connection to the community and the experience. Really, the thing is kind of just the physical, and it's a reminder of the experience. Exactly. So it really isn't that different than your hotel card.
It isn't. It really isn't. And like, I think to me, collecting is such a cool way to have more frequent experiences like that for a smaller price point for the most part. Like, I'm collecting my cards from these travel trips, whereas like Mireka, Craig, and Ken are collecting more frequently with their things and getting those same types of fulfillment out of the experience and that childlike joy more frequently, because the price point of the things that they're collecting is cheaper than a flight, is cheaper than a hotel room, essentially. I would assume. I don't know what some baseball cards go for. I can't say that for certain, but I think it's such a cool way to be able to have that experience, collect. And it's like, genuinely, to me, listening to them, it was not what I expected. I will wholeheartedly say that I definitely have allowed in my brain what I thought collecting was to kind of run that line of like a hoarder. What's the purpose? Where does that play? And I'm 100% guilty of that. But when Mireka said that it brings out that like childlike joy, I was like, oh shit, that's that like societal norm adult in me thinking, oh, but it's your money, it has to be put here, it needs to be put there. What's the value of just having it sit around, when like it's not about that.
It's so much more.
It's so much more about the joy and being able to connect with people and to look at the things that you've collected and know where it came from, what you had to do to get it, who was with you when you finally found something you've been looking for. And like we talked with Melissa about the anticipation and how much that like makes your money more worthwhile for collectors. That anticipation is there so much more consistently because they're anticipating finding those things and looking for it. And so it makes, after the conversation with her and then kind of listening to Mireka talk about the childlike joy, it kind of really hit home to me that, we've been made to believe one thing about collection and our money, not even just collecting, but where our money should go and what that should look like. And yeah, I have definitely changed my mind on it. I have definitely changed my mind on it.
Me too. I have a shoe wall in my office that I have all my favorite shoes on, and I am someone who loves thrift shopping, as you know. So all of my favorite and even like fanciest shoes have been consigned. So I remember finding all of them. So when I look, I put them out for a reason, and it was so that, first of all, I had something on my wall because I wanted something cute on my wall, and I thought, why not my shoes? But I have a memory with every single one of finding them and what that felt like and the excitement around it. And you're right, when I go thrift shopping, there is an anticipation. What am I going to find? That excitement. When we were out looking for CDs last weekend, we were going into local stores. So we were supporting local. We were in neighborhoods in our city that we don't normally go to because we found a store we wanted to go check out. We don't do that very often. And I think the $20 that was end up spent on this CD collection, the memories were so much bigger than that. So I am a complete convert on this. I don't think I'm about to start collecting hockey cards because that's not exactly my jam, but Ken's hockey card collection turned into his job. And what a cool story that is too. So I think we need to let our imaginations run a bit more wild. We need to let the joy and the childhood memories come out, from bobbleheads to Funkos to hockey cards and baseball cards. There's just something that we shouldn't let that inner child go away. And I think as long as you are spending within your means, it's not a reckless thing, you're not doing financial damage to yourself, go have fun, collect something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I don't know. What am I going to collect? I don't know.
I know. I want to find something.
Now I've got to find something to collect now. So
we need to find room to put it in.
I know.
But we will. Yeah, I loved it. And it was such a pleasant surprise. It's not at all what I expected. None of these people got stupid rich off of any of their collections, but they're rich in experience and memories. And that's super cool.
Yeah. Really, really, really cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you for tuning into our collections episode. I know it's a little bit of a different format, but I was so happy to have those guests share their collections with us.
Yeah, and just reminding us that there's so much value in joy and childlike joy and those experiences. And sometimes the things that we collect might seem like a product, but there's actually so much more attached to it. And yeah, I'm excited to continue to break down my barriers towards like that childlike joy that I've got. So
me too. I'll see you at a POG tournament.
I would love that.
Okay, so it's obvious that collecting memories is a big part of this hobby, and those are truly priceless. But one cool thing about collecting is that many collections grow by shopping at small businesses. Finding treasures at your local record store, model car shop, or comic book store is a great way to invest in both your collection, but also a small business. Our partners at credit unions know shopping local is a crucial part of keeping every community vibrant. So why not pop into a local shop sometime soon? Thanks for listening to Your 2 Cents, the podcast.